Hi there. I chose to read the story The Black Cat by Edgar Allan Poe. The story is about a man who is an alcoholic and is slowly becoming more and more violent. He begins the story by claiming that he used to be very kind hearted and loved animals, and that love started to turn into anger and hate. He describes coming home one evening, very intoxicated, and violently harming the cat. It seemed that this was the point when he truly fell off the cliff of sanity. The manner of death in the story was quite gruesome. The story describes the wife grabbed her husband's arm to stop him from swinging an axe at their cat. The husband was outraged by this, and clearly without thinking, then swung the axe at his wife's head. The axe penetrated the skull, killing her instantly. These remains would be extremely difficult to restore. The story states that after death, the man put his wife's remains within the walls and was then not discovered until 4 days later. It also states that the remains had extreme decomposition taking place. Along with the time between death, there's no doubt that moisture and temperature played a very large role in the decomposition. Case analysis would be very important here. Because this story describes the murder as just one swift swing of the axe, I would assume that most of the skull would be intact. As the embalmer, I would want to try to get a recent picture of the deceased to try to give myself an end goal. If indeed the skull is intact, I would want to start embalming immediately because of the decomposition that is taking place. Along with that, due to the death taking place 4 days before, it would certainly be an uphill battle. Right now, my focus would be on the embalming and less on the restoration. Due to the severe decomp, my goal would be to minimize the odor and slow down the process of decomposition any further. With the clotting of blood, I do not expect much drainage, so my arterial solution would have to be that of a very strong index to really penetrate the tissues. During the embalming process, it is very important, to be knowledgeable about the body's anatomy. This case would not just be a basic injection method, like most of the simple cases we're used to, and would most likely require either a restricted cervical injection or a 6-point injection. The 6-point injection would require the use of both the right and left carotid, the axillary, and both femorals. Knowing where to find these arteries is a must for an embalmer using this method. And that can also be said for using the restricted cervical method, as the embalmer would have to find both carotid arteries. With the possible restoration of this case, knowing anatomical guidepost would be important for restoring the facial and cranial bones. Because the death was caused by a force trauma to the skull, there could be bones that were either broken or shattered in both the cranium and the face. Excuse me. As we know, there are 8 cranial bones and 14 facial bones. Being able to locate these bones would be key. Being able to locate these bones would be key, as I would try to repair the skull to its natural order. Even without seeing the body, just from hearing the details from the story in this case, I would highly imagine that this would be a closed casket. With a wound to the skull, left untreated for 4 days, and a heavily decompensated body. You put all this together, and that does not spell well for a viewing. I would certainly try my best with my knowledge of embalming and restoration to get to the point of viewing. but I know that if I'm not fully satisfied with the outcome, I would not succumb the funeral goers or the family to have to see their loved one in such a traumatic way.